So you've just sat down and finished the last mission of your favorite game, and the ending scene comes, or the ending mission, and you think here's gonna be the big climax, the big end of the story, but it ends up being just not it. It's not satisfying enough, or something that you expected to happen does not happen, or maybe even you have to pick a route that for you might not be satisfying just because the game's story decided to go that way. Either it being a revenge story or some sort of vengeance plot you decided that you will have against the big boss or the big enemy that was in the game. But what happened next was completely the opposite, and in return, you kind of feel unsatisfied with the game's ending, or maybe had multiple endings, and the ending you picked you thought was right, and turned out to be not canon, and in return, also leaving you with a bitter feel in your mouth. Well, we're gonna have a look at some of those games which actually did this, and I will also give my opinion on that. So, the first game is Firewatch, as many of you have probably played it, or at least went through it with your favorite YouTuber on their walkthroughs or playthroughs. The game is very interesting and very nicely story driven and so on. And you probably already know that there's Delilah who talks to you over the radio. You get close, you start solving a bigger mystery in the woods nearby as the fire is slowly spreading. And you're trying to, this, go through it and see what is actually happening with the mystery. You think there's a bigger conspiracy, but in the end, there really wasn't anything like that. Firewatch actually doubles down on its narrative ambitions with the ending scene. After teasing a potential relationship between the wandering Henry and his unmet partner Delilah, you get to her location finally, and she purposefully left before Henry could meet her. Delilah reflects on their absurd adventure and ultimately tells Henry to go back to his wife. They both evacuated individually as the fire consumes the forest. And that's it. Roll the credits. That is Firewatch. And the guy doesn't get the girl, as many of you have been expecting. There's no Shireen Return of the Jedi victory scene where everyone gets a medal for solving the big problem. The guy gets left without the girl. He doesn't get anything. Firewatch just ends in a way that feels mundane, but also human. That is the whole point of the game, and that's, enticing for such a reaction, and players or left wondering and warranting explanation of its very clear-cut ending. Shampoo Santo has ultimately proven its point. People would rather believe a comforting lie than face the difficult truth. There was no conspiracy, there was no spark, and Henry should go back and care for his ill wife. Boring, you might say, but I'd argue that Firewatch is the exact opposite, and, there are many points and all angles to this, and, looking from one point, yes, Henry was feeling off and his wife was ill, and he took this Firewatch job for that exact reason, to kind of get away from it. And in my opinion, he just felt different whilst talking with Delilah and being on the job, and he wanted to meet her. And what really happened was, he was, by the end of the game, forced to actually do that, evacuate the forest and return to his normal life, back to his ill wife, back to his home, and without the woman he met on the job. Same as we, after playing the game, either return to our normal daily life or our normal routine, turning on another game, going to make some coffee, eat, or return to our families, friends, and so on. And I think this was a very interesting turn, but in the end, looking from a game's point of view, especially from many other games, this ending was unsatisfying in a way that you built this relationship with a partner you could not see. It was building up to the point you will meet her, maybe even be more than just partners over the radio. And in the end, it didn't happen. There was nothing. You didn't get to see her. You split your ways. You were evacuated separately. There was nothing. And that kind of left you wandering and searching in the dark, like what actually happened. And, well, for me personally, that was a very unsatisfying feel, especially after the character development and how close they got. And next in the list is Ghosts and Goblins. And Ghosts and Goblins is hard, like very, very, very hard. It's cruel and it's very punishing. It's basically good luck beating this merciless platformer. If by some miraculous stroke of luck you manage to make it to the end and defeat Satan, the lord of the underworld, not the designer of the game, you are rewarded with, well, a fake ending. Yeah, that's right, it's a fake ending. Not only you have to beat two Satans and the Great Satan, but you are actually forced to play the entire game over again to earn the true ending. And wanna hear the cherry on top for this game? The final battle marked an insane difficulty spike that pretty much ruined the game. Of course, 12 total levels doesn't sound all that bad at first, but this is one of those no password, no save files, no checkpoints, nothing like that. So it must be completed in a single gaming sprint, and most players don't even know about the secret ending because it's impossible basically to make it past the first stage, let alone the final boss. So the game itself is just insane, you could say that. And after hearing this, well, all I can say is the ending also is not that satisfying, especially after the full challenge you've been put through. So now that you're adequately prepared for what's to come, go forth and rescue Princess Prin Prin, if you dare. And third on the list, we have The Last of Us Part 2. And many of you might be thinking why this game is, well, one of the great games that come from the Last of Us series, but I will be informing you that the ending is not satisfying. At least for me, it was, well, very, very much unsatisfying. The ending sequence for Last of Us 2 really begins following Ellie and Abby's fight in the theater. Abby, having overpowered a vengeful Ellie, leaves her counterpart alive but tells her that she never wants to see her face again. And here the whole grudge and everything continues on and keeps building up to the final climax, or at least you're led to believe that. Ellie is still suffering and probably will be for a long time, suffering from PTSD in the aftermath of Joel's death. Despite appearing to have moved on, Ellie can't sleep and suffers flashbacks to her ordeal. After all, she never truly got her revenge, and this is what the game leads you to believe, like a full revenge story about taking care, or basically taking out, the person that caused so much pain and suffering to Ellie. Like a full-on revenge story. You're building up the anger, everything's leading up to this final climax, the final battle where you get your revenge. So the whole ending goes like this. Ellie makes her way to the beach and finds weakened Abby as she previously encountered compared to the last time. Abby was, well, much thinner. We see her completely unlike the woman we saw her at the start. She was almost recognizable from the warrior we once knew. And while feeling empathy for her nemesis and perhaps wanting to be the one who's responsible for Abby's death, Ellie frees Lev and Abby, escorting them to some nearby boats, but as Abby and Lev are about to make their escape, Ellie decides she is not going to let her closure go that easily and forces Abby into a final fight. And well, the final fight is, well, very uncomfortable and violent. Both Abby and Ellie are broken by their desire for revenge, and their vendettas have taken over their lives and, well, cost them those they love. And eventually, Ellie gets the upper hand on Abby. But nothing really comes to it. Ellie tries to drown her before a flashback of Joel sees her, letting go of both Abby and the revenge mission that has cost her everything. And this is where it ends. Ellie just breaks down and lets Abby sail off with Lev. That's it. That's the ending. We don't get the revenge for Joel. We don't get any closure. And for such a game that is, well, such story driven, and especially leading up to this point as a revenge story, and we get nothing, left me feeling very strange, and I truly also was not satisfied with the ending. Yes, the game was great and the story was almost perfect, but the ending was not satisfying. We did not get the revenge we wanted for, especially for Joel, who was such a beloved character. So the final thing, and number 4 on the list, is, well, Borderlands 1. And it is true that Borderlands ending is one of the most disappointing endings that a video game has had ever, really. And from the long build-up of hordes with one of the strongest and well-coordinated enemies in the game to a boss fight that takes 20 or 30 minutes, depends on your playstyle, to finish, including endless minion spawns and so on. But what makes it even harder was the fact that if you lost and died, you had to start it all over again. So that means, let's say you're almost done with the boss, and let's say you die very, very close to defeating him. You had to essentially replay almost an hour again just to get to the point where you were. And the real kick in the nuts was, after defeating the final boss, there was no loot. Just a small credit payout. There was nothing in the vault. The boss was the vault, and after killing it, it just closes the portal. That's it. That's all there was to it. There was no epic ending cutscene or something. The boss just goes back into its portal vault. It just closes. You don't get any epic closure that the whole game was building up on as well. And, well, it may leave a sour taste in your mouth. It may make you delete the game and not touch it again. I know some players and from my friends that, well, actually did this. They never touched the game again because of this. And I don't blame them. I don't blame them at all. I also have not touched Borderlands 1 after reaching this ending through trying over and over again. And, dying and building up to the ending, and I didn't really get to it. And after I finally did, I just got that. And my honest reaction was, after I saw the credits spawn in my inventory, I thought maybe I have to leave the area and something will spawn outside. I went and there was nothing. So yeah, first thing was I uninstalled the game, turned off my computer, and just went outside to touch some grass, basically. So, yeah. So, these were the endings that were not satisfying, especially counting the fact that, well, games are not real life. You can really push the boundaries sometimes, either that being a revenge plot or that being full-on vengeance or just going after the villain as mercilessly as you can. And when you encounter endings like these, well, it either leaves you feeling a bit empty, unsatisfied, not, well, good or pleasant in a way. Because, well, many games who allow these endings where you actually defeat the bad guy, you destroy him, or you get the girl, or you basically get what you were going for, whether or not that being just a relationship, defeating your nemesis to the point where he no longer exists, or building a criminal empire just to shove it in someone's face. Well, that feels very good, right? But when you get an ending where the build up was there was everything going that direction, you get hyped up for it, and that doesn't happen, you basically get slapped in the face and told, no. That's when you decide and probably are left feeling that the whole build up was not worth it, and leaves you feeling a bit bitter. Yes, there are some people that like these kinds of endings too, and it does feel human and more natural to have those sprinkled in, but it's a video game. We play them for the fact that they're not reality, and we can explore these kinds of scenarios and revenge stories and vengeance stories because that's part of human nature and that's entertaining. But once we don't get those, we are left unsatisfied.